Alrighty, welcome into the Gary Ayd Show here on The Cave, cavetalkradio.com and the Cave Talk Radio app. It's great to have you aboard. Gary Ayd with you. Rich Anselmo will join me in hour two as he continues his recovery from vocal cord injury. Beginning to dip the toes back into the water a little bit, which is nice. Good to have him back, at least for part of the show. First hour will be me keeping you company. We'll have Sean Palmer from Back Sports Page at 10:30. We'll have our question of the day in about 20 minutes. Sean will be talking NFL drafts, particularly Giants and Jets. But right now we start with the New York Yankees. We started here yesterday. We're going to start here again. Brutal loss, I'm told, yesterday. I didn't see the game, but I do know this. This team is devoid of leadership. It's devoid of vision. And I think it's devoid of talent evaluation aptitude. I think they miss a lot more than they hit. Volpe looks okay, looks pretty good. But Aaron Hicks, for basically a decade now, it feels like, maybe a little less, has been an abject disaster. Gleyber Torres has not lived up to what he was supposed to be. He's an okay player, but he's not the superstar he was projected to be. Nestor Cortez is ineffective right now. I mean, you go up and down the line. We know Stanton's injuries have made that contract look bad. Even Judge, look, what did we talk about all last year? Last year, we talked about the Yankees being in a position where they didn't have much of a choice. They had to re-sign Judge. But you also felt that in so doing, you were going to take on a contract of length and expense that was unlikely to be lived up to because of Judge's own foibles with injuries and his own inconsistencies. And look, you can marginalize it all you want. Oh, it's just a short-term hip injury. It's not that big a deal, blah, blah, blah. Maybe taken onto itself, maybe it won't be. But this is what this guy has been throughout his entire career. Big rookie year, kind of went in the tank for a couple of years. Had a couple of decent years in there. Not he had some really good years. By a normal person's standards, great years, but by a great player's standards, normal years and suboptimal years. Then he explodes last year with an AL record, 62 home runs. And now he's back on the injury list. And he'll be back again. He's by far their best player. And you understand why the Yankees wanted to keep him. He's their best player. He's their marquee player. Everyone knows him. He's the face of the franchise. It all makes sense. But he's not going to be any more likely to carry your team to victory than Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout in Anaheim are. If we've learned anything from the Angels these last handful of years, it's that one or two great players does not a team make. We should know this in baseball. We only had about 200 years of history to tell us this. But sometimes I think we forget. We're in such a star-driven culture, such an individualistic-driven culture, such a top-shelf sizzle culture that I think we forget the realities of some of the games that we talk about, we love, we watch, and we follow. I think we forget the reality that with baseball in particular, especially baseball, a couple of great players doesn't even mean you're going to be a good team. Think about the Rangers in the early 2000s. They had the best player in the game in Alex Rodriguez. They had one of the best first basemen in the game in Mark Teixeira. They had a great young left side of the infield guy, Michael Young. And what did they do? Nothing. They were horrible. So I think that we forget that. And right now, I have to tell you, I look at this Yankee team, like I was saying yesterday, and I don't see much. I really don't. I don't see a pitching staff outside of Garrett Cole. I don't see a lineup outside of Aaron Judge. I don't see the cavalry coming outside of maybe Anthony Volpe. I know with the Mets, they've had their issues, but Beatty's playing like a beast. You expect Alvarez to eventually do the same. That other kid, Gary Show, or however you pronounce his name, you think's going to be good. You question their pitching, but there's some pieces in the Mets organization. The Yankees have a couple. I don't want to say they don't, but there's not a lot of hope here right now. I look at their roster and I think to myself, okay, we got Jason Dominguez at AA. When are we seeing him? When's he coming up? You have Austin Wells, single A. He's probably far away. Spencer Jones, local kid. He's here at the Hudson Valley right now. I doubt he'll be here much longer. He's been great. He's probably my favorite prospect of all of them. Dominguez is, everyone likes Dominguez, but the guy's 5'9". I'm sorry, that's not inspiring. My point is this, not to overanalyze the merits of minor leaguers, which I'm no expert on doing, so I'm not going to. But my point is, the Mets guys feel like they're ready or about ready, or maybe even beyond ready in some cases, like Beatty, to step in and make that impact. I don't feel that way with the Yankees. I don't feel that way. And I don't know that many objective, honest people that do. The bottom line is this Yankee team is in trouble. And they're in trouble because they have essentially kept the same general team together ever since the end of Girardi's tenure here. What were the baby Yankees are now the older Yankees. And they never improved. They never got better. They were the same team in Girardi's last year as they are today. Same quality team. Obviously, there's been some pieces that have come and gone, but the same level. They're key guys who were young then, Judge, Hicks, a few others. I think I don't think Torres was on that team yet. He wasn't. Brett Gardner, of course, was there. No longer there. Not a young guy, of course, on that team, a veteran. But the bottom line is they haven't improved. And they haven't diversified. It reminds me of Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony came into the league probably about as good as LeBron James. It was a pretty good toss-up as to who was going to win Rookie of the Year in 2003. LeBron ended up winning it, but it could have gone either way. But while LeBron continued to evolve, layer his game, add new abilities, refine certain things, Melo essentially stayed the same for his entire career. Now, he was a great player, one of the better scorers of the last 30 years. But that's all he was coming out of college, and that's all he stayed throughout his entire NBA career, which I assume at this point is over. The bottom line is he didn't get better. He didn't evolve. He stayed the same. This Yankee team was really good in Girardi's last year and has been really good ever since. But they've never been great. They've never been a true championship contending team. And now, like Melo, as their athleticism maybe fades a little bit, as the reality that whatever promise they had 6-7 years ago has not been realized and will likely not be fully realized, you are beginning to see the pendulum swing the other way. You're beginning to see the Yankees' outlook be downgraded. It's like a stock graded, right? Or a credit rating. It's getting downgraded. Moody's is knocking your rating down a little bit here because the guys that were supposed to carry you to that next level, other than Judge when healthy, have not been able to do that. The pitchers are not what they were supposed to be. That's never been a strength of Cashman. And that bullpen, which has been the rock of your team for so many years, is getting a little tired, a little exposed. And other teams, maybe most importantly, have been better at improving themselves over these years. The Blue Jays, we know the player development machine that Tampa Bay is. Now the Orioles are suddenly really good. Even the Red Sox, who we kind of thought would probably bring up the basement, and they still very well might, they are, I think, better than a lot of people, certainly better than I expected. Where does this leave the Yankees? Can you confidently say that this Yankee team is better than Baltimore, Tampa, or Toronto? I can't. In fact, I'll say the opposite. I'm pretty confident that they're not better than any of those teams. I'm not confident that they're even better than Boston. This feels like a fourth or fifth place team to me. It doesn't feel like a team that's going to lose 100 games. I'm not going to exaggerate, but it feels like a team that's going to lose 80 or so. It feels like a team that's going to be somewhere between 5 games above and below 500. That's what this team feels like to me. It feels like a team, the last few years felt like a team, they got off to that crazy start last year, but it's always felt like a team the last several years that was going to win between 88 and 94 games. They went a little crazy at the beginning of last year, so they won more. But it always had that same feel. Now it's taken a 20% step in the wrong direction. Now it feels like it's a team that's going to win between 75 and 85 games. And I that's not going to be good enough. Not in this division, not this year. And I got to tell you, where is the plan to turn this around? Where is the plan to rebuild? Where is the plan to reload? Where is it? Where's the leadership? Where's the inspiration? Where's the rallying point? None of that exists right now. That's my long-winded, bigger point. Brian Cashman is basically a computer scientist at this point, nothing else. Aaron Boone is basically his program in the dugout. And Hal Steinbrenner is content to just be okay and relevant. Yankee fans, I got to tell you, I think you're in for a long spell of mediocrity to good and mix in some bad. That's what I think the Yankees are going to be for the foreseeable future. I don't think they'll ever be Detroit. I don't think they'll ever be Cincinnati. I don't think they're ever going to be one of those teams at the bottom of the barrel. But I do think they're going to be, and more troubling, are comfortable being just okay. I think they are perfectly fine being just okay. As long as they have enough star power to sell their tickets, to get their TV ratings, to sell their merchandise, I think they're perfectly content whether they win or not. And I know a lot of Yankee fans agree with me on that. It's a bad look. And look, I should know what it looks like. I've been a Met fan my entire adult life, since I was a freshman in high school. My freshman year, they went to the World Series, lost to the Yankees in 5, the Subway Series. They had an agonizing loss in 2006, which I think is the best Met team I've ever seen. Then they went in the dumps for about a decade, had a surprise run to the World Series in 2015, thanks to Daniel Murphy turning into Babe Ruth and Yoenis Cespedes turning into Hank Aaron for a couple of months at the right time of year, before losing to, of all teams, the Kansas City Royals. That just sucks to have to say. And now but that was luck, right? That was just lightning in the bottle, that 2015 run. It didn't feel real. It felt like found money, and it was. And we knew it at the time. You enjoy it when you find the $100 bill on the cushion of the couch. You enjoy it. You go out to a nice dinner, but you don't depend on it. You don't think, okay, I can do that again. No, you can't. And then the team was bad for a lot of years because they had indifferent and or cheap ownership. And the problem with that type of ownership is you're stuck with it. Unlike a manager, general manager, even players, you can't fire or trade the owner, usually. So that means you're stuck with it. So the same guy that has built this culture and roster of uninspiring mediocrity is going to continue to do so. So I'm just warning you, Yankee fans, from someone who has watched it for most of my life. I know what indifferent ownership looks like and what type of teams it manifests. And you got it in spades right now with Hal Steinbrenner. You absolutely do. Don't expect this thing to turn around. You might get some popping prospects here and there. And the good news, the one thing for the Yankees that's different from the Mets and different from a lot of teams that rely so heavily on their young prospects. The one thing they're going to have the advantage on. Hal Steinbrenner, as you saw with the Judge contract, has shown a willingness to have a high enough payroll to retain the homegrown guys that do pop and become stars. So if Volpe, Dominguez, Jones, Wells, if any of these guys that we talked about a minute ago, if any of them become stars, they will be retained by the Yankees unless they just don't want to be there. But the Yankees will not lose out on retaining their own guys. That they won't do. And that's the difference between the Yankees and a lot of organizations. But the days of the Yankees going out and actually improving their team, those are done. And I question the ability of this front office and this player development core to bring up enough young players and develop them good enough, consistently enough to kind of rebuild this team on the fly. I just don't see it happening. I think the Yankees are going to have players that pop, but I think overall they're not going to have a team capable of competing at the highest level for quite some time. That is my prediction. Sorry to say, Yankee fans, but that I've seen it for years. I know what it looks like. I'm thankful beyond measure that Steve Cohen now owns the Mets instead of the Wilpons. I know what a big deal that is. And ultimately, I think the Yankees are in a lot of trouble. If the goal is to be top of the heap, the goal of the Yankee fans, they're going to have to reassess their goals because that's not the goal of the organization. And that's very clear. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. We'll do the question of the day. Sean Palmer. Then after that, it's the Gary Ayd Show here on The Cave.
Do you own a timeshare? Well, face the facts. You made a mistake. You made a bad purchase. A timeshare is not an investment. It's a money pit that continues forever. If you use your timeshare, that's great. But if you don't and you want to legally get out of your contract, call my friends right now at the Timeshare Exit Hotline. They're an experienced team of lawyers who help good people like you get out of a timeshare contract that they just don't want. Don't throw away your money on maintenance fees. Use it for things you really want. We can help you end your timeshare contract and stop the money drain immediately. If you're ready to move on with your timeshare, call our team right now.
Cancel your timeshare now with a free call. 800-741-9557. 800-741-9557. 800-741-9557. That's 800-741-9557. If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. Ouch! Well, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers. If you administer insulin 3 or more times per day or use an insulin pump, call now and learn how a CGM can help you.
Painless. No more pricking my finger.
No finger pricks.
Convenience. They delivered it free and they took care of all the paperwork.
You can reduce pain right away. Plus, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you spend more time in range. And if you have insurance, you can get a new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. Call now and get free shipping of your new CGM. Plus, we'll bill your insurance for you. 800-826-5884. 800-826-5884. 800-826-5884. That's 800-826-5884.
Short-form content has been proven to be the ideal format for continuous engagement with younger generations seeking social-first formats. I am KO, back in 1 minute with your sports question of the day.
Would you like to hear better for as little as 10 cents a day? Now you can with the all-new Audion hearing aids. The average hearing aid lasts about 3 years. Ours, at only $99 a pair, means you're paying as little as 10 cents a day to hear better. And to make things even better, we'll give you a 45-day money-back guarantee. Skip the doctor and get hearing aids delivered straight to your door. We've eliminated all the middlemen to offer you a factory direct price of only $99 a pair. Join over 300,000 people just like you who took advantage of our 45-day trial offer. Now you can hear better too for just 10 cents a day. Call now and order your $99 pair of Audion hearing aids with a 45-day money-back guarantee. Plus, get free 3 to 5 day shipping.
800-226-1471. 800-226-1471. 800-226-1471. That's 800-226-1471.
Global sports media and entertainment company Team Whistle is launching a slate of short-form content targeting millennial and Gen Z audiences. An in-house survey recently conducted by the firm determined that 87% of participants are constantly consuming short-form content, with 92% prioritizing digestible, humorous, and relatable short-form material. Question: do you consume the majority of your sports content via long or short format?
This is interesting. I'm of the generation that's sort of between Gen X and the millennial generation. We're actually a subsection of the millennial generation unofficially called Zennials. We're sort of half Gen X and half millennials. And that's the group of us that are born basically between 1980 and 1985 or 6. So I'm right on the edge of that. I was born in 85. So we sort of have a split personality in terms of our own consumption habits and worldviews and approach to life. We were sort of the guinea pigs of a lot of the stuff that is now common today. We were the first to kind of live through it, but we're old enough to have lived through sort of the old school way. Like, for example, I didn't have my first computer until I was a freshman in high school. I didn't have a cell phone until I was, I think, a junior in college. In terms of, I didn't have a cell phone until I was in college. I didn't have a smartphone until my first year or so as a full-time radio broadcaster in Virginia in 2011. So, but now my life is all about a lot of that stuff. So we've sort of lived on the transition of the two worlds, the modern world and the old world. So my particular generation consumes a healthy amount of both short form and long form. I can tell you this, and this is not generational, this is individual, this is me specifically, and I know I'm in a vast minority here. I do not consume hardly any short form video. If someone sends me like a video, I'm not going to watch it. If it's a photo, I'll look at it. If it's an article or a meme, I'll likely read it. If it's a audio sound clip, I'll probably listen to it. If it's a video, I'm not going to watch it. I basically watch 0 short form videos, almost none. And I know that that's not the norm, exactly the opposite. But I consume a pretty even amount of short form and longer form content. If we define long form content as listening to a radio show, watching a game, or watching, let's say, a documentary, or listening to an audiobook, I do a lot of those things. We define short-term content as reading a social post, looking at a meme, watching a short video or a reel. I do a lot of some of those things and virtually none of others. So I guess on balance, I probably consume content slightly more frequently on long form styles versus short form styles. but I do consume a lot of both. And I think even among the younger generation, there's probably a place for both, because what short form content really does is it makes you laugh, makes you think, or exposes you to something that you have already in some way, based on your behavior online, indicated you enjoy. And generally speaking, it just makes common sense. If you enjoy something, if you're interested in a topic, you're gonna actively seek places to go and learn more about it, consume more about it, immerse yourself in it more if you're really into a topic. And what does all that mean if you're going to go do that? Let's say you're into hockey. You're going to probably watch NHL games. You're going to probably look for NHL personalities to follow on social. You're probably going to watch longer videos. You might listen to some radio shows. If you're really into it, you're probably going to read some books or listen to some audiobooks about some of your favorite players, past and present. All of that stuff basically is what you would define as long form content. So I think short form content might be the day-to-day 8 out of 10 pieces of content that a younger audience member consumes might be short form content, but their actual engagement level, the part that advertisers really want, the part that really indicates love for a particular content platform, style, or producer, is still resigning in the long form department, because now that they have been captured by the small short form, they are engaging and pursuing the long form on topics that they now have or have long had an intense interest about. What's not happening, what is different, is you used to discover what you were interested in, then learning more about via long form platforms like radio shows. Music radio in particular was the best at that for a lot of years. That's where you discovered songs. But then Pandora came around, and before that, Napster, and after that, LimeWire. Anyone that is old enough, about 35 or so, remembers all the computer viruses we all got from these things. Is before you could just look something up on YouTube. Of course, YouTube came around. So now you don't do as much discovery with long form platforms and content styles, but you do your heaviest listening, viewing, reading, and engagement with them, and you discover stuff in short form. All right, let's go ahead and take a break. We're going to bring on Sean Palmer. It's the Gary Ayd Show coming up after this here on The Cave.
Are you like me? You have health insurance, but you don't have dental insurance. Do you need to get to the dentist right away? Maybe you need an implant or some other major service. Well, I found a dental insurance plan that's just right for you. It's called Spirit Dental. Spirit Dental offers a $100 lifetime deductible, a huge network of dentists. And here's the best part. There's no waiting periods. Yeah, that means you can call right now and have real dental insurance for you and your family tomorrow and get that immediate coverage you want. Spirit Dental has plans for just a few dollars a day, up to $5,000 annual maximum, and coverage for implants. Whatever age you are, the dental insurance you need is a free phone call away. Now don't wait, and be sure to ask about Spirit's vision plan. Here's the number: 800-631-9229. 800-631-9229. That's 800-631-9229.
Hey friend, life happens and you need money. What do? You call the special toll-free number we're about to give you. We will send you a link to your phone with details on how you can loan up to $5,000. Couldn't you use $5,000 to pay for your rent, pay grocery bills, get your car repaired, or whatever you need? It's up to you. We don't care. We're just here to lend you the money. And we'll lend people money with good, bad, or no credit at all. Of course, some terms and conditions apply, and you'll see those on the link we're going to send you. So if you need up to $5,000 maybe as soon as the next business day, call this number right now. We will text you a free link with details.
Paid for by Money Mutual. Call 800-586-7112. 800-586-7112. 800-586-7112. That's 800-586-7112.
All righty, we're back here on the Gary Ayd Show. Sean Palmer from Back Sports Page is with us. What's up, Sean?
Hey, buddy. How are you today?
I'm doing very good. Things are moving and shaking. This is one of my favorite times of the sports year. Everyone talks about October, but I got to tell you, May and June might be my favorite time of the year. You got NBA playoffs. You had the NFL draft recently. You got baseball in full swing. This is a great time on the sports calendar.
I agree. And you got the NBA draft coming up in about a month.
That's
so,
right.
I mean, every month and a half, really.
Yep.
I mean,
NHL
the NBA
playoffs. Yep.
The one thing that bothers me about this time of year is how the tendency for games to be 2 or 3 days away, sometimes even 3 or 4 days away, especially in the NBA schedule. Like load management is, I mean, you might as well just get, and how, I mean, John Hollinger brought this up today in The Athletic, is how irrelevant the regular season is for the NBA, or it could be construed, right? Because you have Miami beats Milwaukee, so obviously that didn't matter. The Knicks being the lower seed, the 8 over the 1. The Knicks beating the Cavs.
Well, that was
6 over the 5.
that was a 6-3. Those are usually competitive series.
Okay, but 1-8 is not.
No,
and then you got 2-7. Then you got the Lakers and right. I mean, you can keep going, right?
No, I understand. We talked about this yesterday. My point, my general opinion on this is you can't have it both ways, because most years, and I'm sure you've heard this, people argue that the NBA regular season doesn't matter because we know the top seeds are going to win. Well, now they say the NBA regular season doesn't matter because the top seeds aren't winning. Well, which is it?
That's fair.
The truth of the matter is this 1-8. What is this, the 4th time in almost 80 years that's happened?
Yeah, but you're going to see more. I think you might actually see more and more of it. And part of it is twofold. Number one, you have more teams that can get into the playoffs, right? I like the play-in concept. I hate the fact that half of the NBA is in the playoffs.
If you count the play-in as the playoffs, which
I cannot stand it.
Yeah,
I cannot stand that concept. The other thing is, all right, you number 1 seed, you have won. Congratulations, you are now the one seed. Now you get 10 days off. Now you're going to rust, right? You have that break, and again, you can play that both ways, right? The break is great because it allows you to get healthy. And then the break, as we saw with Milwaukee, kind of slows you down.
Yeah, I tend to be that part I agree with you on. I tend to think a long break like that is not good unless you have a star player injured. Like if you have a guy going into the playoffs that's iffy and you have that 10 days off, it could be a godsend. But other than that, I agree with you.
Speaking of guys that are injured, the Sixers didn't really miss Joel Embiid last night.
Let me tell you something. That was the best game of James Harden's career. It was the most important game of his career. He put a team on his shoulders when they had no other alternative, and he was victorious, hitting what amounted to the game winner. Just a stellar performance. I've been a long-time Harden critic. The way he's played this year in Philadelphia, this is the best year of his career. I love this version of James Harden.
With a hand in his face, right?
100%.
I mean, that was not an open 3 by any stretch.
No, not at all. That was a contested step back.
And I will tell you, the most impressive, and ABC pointed this out last night, the most impressive thing about Harden last night, the most impressive one play, was not the step back 3. It was the drive and the pass back to Tobias Harris. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not sure Houston James Harden makes that pass.
Probably not.
I think Houston James Harden says, I'm going to do this myself.
Yep.
I agree. He goes in, and look, Harden has become, the story in ESPN, and I have no problem on any show that I come on to reference other people's work, because it makes all the sense.
Absolutely.
Story in ESPN, I can't pull out the author at this point. But PJ Tucker references James Harden, says, so could James Harden be doing today when 5 years ago when he was in Houston? He goes, no, that James Harden didn't exist, right? Yep. He was not a team player. He was a me player. And Harden taking the pay cut, making sure that he gets his guys. Look, he's probably seeing the writing on the wall that he's probably done everything that there is to be done in the NBA except win a championship.
Yep. And I'll tell you something else. He competes on defense now where he never did before.
No one's ever he's not a turnstile.
Right. No one's ever going to confuse him with a stopper. He's not PJ Tucker, but he's a willing, competitive defender now who does his job on that end of the floor.
As a Syracuse grad, I love Carmelo Anthony. I really do. But Carmelo Anthony
never gave two craps.
Playoff, regular season, could have been in the Olympics. He was a turnstile on defense.
Yep.
That's just what he was.
Absolutely.
That's what Trae Young is.
Yep. Oh God.
I mean, those guys are just they are great offensive players.
Yep.
And they are dynamic offensive players. But they have the ability, I have to believe. Look, Carmelo did in the Olympics. So I mean, you have the ability to play defense. You just choose not to.
Yeah.
And Harden has chosen to play defense.
You know, by the way, one other thing I'll say about that game, I want to talk some NFL draft, but one other thing I'll say about that game yesterday, I made this comment on Facebook. I think if the footage had been grainier and I would have gotten like a nasally broadcaster, I would have thought with those uniforms and James Harden's appearance and game style that I was watching a 1977 basketball game. Those uniforms were amazing. They looked like something straight out of the ABA, 1976. Harden with the beard, the balding head, the herky-jerky Uncle Drew game. Everything about it said 1977 to me, except the HD footage.
Except for the fact that the Celtics didn't win.
Well, that too.
Because everything in the 70s was a Celtic win, right?
That's true, right?
and how do you, first of all, can there be anybody more scarier than Jaylen Brown? I mean, that mask.
That is Darth Vader all
Seriously.
The way. It really is, yes.
I was like, wow, that I would not want to pick up my dribble and be looking at that thing. I mean, look, he's a great player. You know,
I know how you feel about him.
It is one of the things that Seth and I talked about last night. Is who's your favorite? Let me ask you this: who's your favorite player right now in the NBA to watch?
Probably it's one of two guys. It's either Jokic or LeBron.
Okay, and mine is Jaylen Brown. Just in general, I think he puts it all together.
Yep.
And Embiid, because Embiid has skills.
Embiid's high on my list too. So is Luka.
Embiid just has skills that nobody else in the NBA does.
That's true.
And look, can they win a championship without Embiid? No. But they don't need to. They got their split. That's what they needed. Yep. They needed one prolific James Harden game.
They got it.
And they got it.
Yeah.
And now they're in the driver's seat. And
by the way, give Maxey some props too. This guy's a beast. Of course. Guy's really good now.
How about DeAndre Melton putting up 17 last night as a second round pick?
Yep.
And Tobias Harris, the $40 million forgotten man. I mean, it all started and finished with James Harden. And the fact is, and like I said before, the most impressive play was the back pass to Tobias Harris for three.
Yep.
Because he involved other people, which 5 years ago, 10 years ago is not that James Harden left Oklahoma City because he didn't want to involve other people.
Right. And he piled up a ton of assists in Houston, but they were like selfish assists. I know that's like almost a contradictory statement.
They were Russell Westbrook assists. I want triple-double assists.
Yeah. Except Westbrook. Yeah, but Westbrook was leading a team devoid of any talent to the playoffs. I've always been a Westbrook guy. He's also high on my list of favorite players. But that's neither here nor there. Let me ask you about the Giants draft real quick. What did you make of the Giants and Jets in the NFL draft this year? Obviously, we know the Jets' big play was obviously not the draft. It was the acquisition of Rodgers. Let's talk about the Giants. How do you think they came out from this draft? Do you think they got better or worse? What do you think?
Oh, they did. Well, look, the Giants got better because they got a cornerback, which they desperately needed across from Adoree Jackson. I'm not telling you anything you haven't read in any of these other reports.
Yep.
And they got a center, right? The best part about the New York teams this year is that they didn't need to kick the crap out of the draft to win. They don't need a quarterback. They didn't need a running back. They weren't needy. Like you see what the Eagles did. And the Eagles won the draft. But do the Eagles need to win the draft? No. Like, they needed to skirt around the edges, right? If they didn't get Jalen Carter, would they still have done great in the draft just getting Nolan Smith? Sure. You know why? They're a good team, right? Yep. The Jets and Giants are good teams. For the first time in recent memory, yep. Both teams didn't have top 10 picks and didn't need everything out of the draft to make this season something to watch. So, like last year, right? The Jets absolutely needed at a 4-10 to hit on both. Also, they were not going to be an exciting team to watch. And truth be told, with Zach Wilson, they really weren't. But the fact is, both teams did very well for what they did. They worked on the edges. And look, did the Jets get the guy that they wanted in Broderick Jones? No, they didn't. And that's unfortunate. It is. It's unfortunate because they really could use an offensive lineman.
Let me ask you this about the Giants specifically, because the one critique I have with their draft is I think this receiving core is porous. And I know they drafted Hyatt in the 3rd round. I know he's a deep threat.
Seth loves him, by the way.
I don't feel they did it.
This guy.
And I have no reason to argue with that. I don't know enough about him to have a strong opinion one way or the other. But I feel like, to me, going into this draft, no doubt that defensive back was a big need. Perfect pick. Good. Fine. I thought they should have gone receiver at least twice in this draft. I think their receiving core is old, injury prone, and limited even when healthy. And I don't know that Hyatt is enough.
Okay.
That's my.
Do you include Darren Waller in that receiving core? Because that's your 3rd round pick this year.
Right. No, I understand. I do include that. I guess I meant more like spacing and, spreading out the defense a little bit. Waller is an incredible tight end, but he's not necessarily a deep threat. And there's nothing preventing me, if I'm a defense, from stacking the box and kind of making Daniel Jones beat me over the top and trying to stop Saquon Barkley.
Sure. And I think there's 2 things that go along with that. And you're right. In both cases, there was nobody in this draft that could have done that anyway, in my opinion, because you're limited by what Daniel Jones can do. Daniel Jones is not Aaron Rodgers.
Nope.
He is not he is not Lamar Jackson.
Nope.
Right? He is a top 15. He's a 10 to 15 quarterback right now.
Maybe 15 to 20 even.
Maybe, but I may be proven wrong, right? But he doesn't have the arm of Derek Carr.
Nope.
He is a guy that is going to think he's a better Chad Pennington.
Yeah, basically he's Alex Smith,
right?
Essentially.
Yeah, he's Alex Smith.
Yeah.
Alex Smith was never going to beat you long. Didn't matter what wide receiver you had.
Right.
Tyreek Hill didn't become Tyreek Hill until Pat Mahomes became the quarterback.
That's right.
Right? They had Marcel Hardman. That didn't happen. I'm sorry, that was afterwards.
Yes.
They had Dante Hall.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Didn't use him as a wide receiver.
Nope. Kick return.
Didn't work because you didn't have the guy that could throw the ball that far. So I'm not sure, no matter who you brought in. Look, would Zay Flowers have done really well in this offense? Sure. But I don't think he was running 50-yard outs. I think he would have been dinking and dunking too. So I'm not really sure any wide receiver. The Giants aren't winning with long bombs.
Now this isn't.
It's not Darryl LaMonica.
Right. No, I understand. This isn't a draft question. It's more of a broader picture question. What do you think? There's been a lot of debate about the wisdom or lack thereof of the Rodgers acquisition among Jet fans and local sports personalities on both sides of it. But my question for you is, what is your sense of what it will take to make that more of a uniform, yes, that was the right thing to do? What do you think it will take?
So 2 things. He needs to play 2 years.
Okay.
If he plays 1 year and does not win a Super Bowl, it does not matter.
Right. Okay.
Okay. He needs to play 2 years.
Okay.
They need to get to an AFC championship game. I think if they play 2 years and he gets to an AFC championship game, that's fine.
And they're competitive in the other year, like 2 playoff appearances and an NFC title game.
Yep. And that works. Look, as a Jet fan, as a guy that is obnoxiously a Jet fan, and I am. Look, I wear my heart on my sleeve. I think they gave up too much. I think they did exactly what James Dolan did with Carmelo Anthony, which at the time threw me for a loop. You have all the leverage in the world, and this is what you do? Like, it will be hard for me to come around without 2 seasons and an AFC championship game to thinking that this is a good deal. But I will tell you what would.
Okay.
And this is the only way that one of those 2 things, if those 2 things don't come to pass, that they win. What if he actually gets Zach Wilson to be a 10-year quarterback? I'm not joking.
Oh,
What if part of his look? I think Aaron Rodgers is an ass. I do. I think as a person,
it's probably true.
This is a guy I don't want on my team.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Okay,
Yep.
But you don't get to choose guys that are on your team, right? I mean, this is not a person. This is not a guy I'm going to have a beer with.
Nope.
This is not a guy that I'm going to.
Are you gonna sit in the dark room with him in a silence retreat?
No, none of that. Like, none of that. Look, everything he has done over the past 3 years has been, you can say, the actions of an ass. Everything. COVID, everything, right? He is an egotistical, pompous ass. So he is. And I don't think he shies away from it either. I think he acknowledges that's who he is.
Yep.
But if he's 40 years old right now, if he retires at 42 and the Jets do what the Packers did with Jordan Love today, which was sign an additional year extension for $13 million for that 5th-year option, and Zach Wilson becomes a viable top 15 quarterback because he sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 2 years, that's worth it. That means the Jets don't have to go back down to the draft game again.
Right. Which they've been so successful at over the decades.
Correct. Correct. Well, and that's what I'm saying. If Zach Wilson right now is 21 years old, 21 or 22. If he becomes the Jets quarterback at 25 again and becomes a top 10 quarterback at 25. Now, I know this is a huge stretch, but if he does, and it's all because he was able to sit behind Rodgers for 2 years, right, and actually develop, as opposed to just throwing him into the fire. And Aaron Rodgers actually teaches him. Yeah, this was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing, I'll ask you one last question on this.
Yeah,
because the AFC, as we know, is loaded. I mean, it's loaded. I mean, making an AFC championship game for anyone is going to be an incredible accomplishment.
That's right. Of all the years that I don't want to get Aaron Rodgers and spend that capital, this was the year. Yep.
So let me ask you this. Let's say the Jets have 2 seasons where they win somewhere between 10 and 12 games and make the playoffs both times, but don't get to the AFC title game. How do you look at it then? Because that's very realistic. I think the Jets are a playoff team. I think it's a tall task to ask anyone to get past Kansas City the next couple of years.
Well, here's my next question for you. How many teams out of the AFC East do you think are making the playoffs this year?
2. I think the Bills and the Jets.
Okay, so they're making the playoffs where they have to play the NFC East and the AFC West and themselves. And you're putting 2 of those teams in?
I got
how hard it is to get 2 teams in with that type of schedule.
It's gonna be tough. I don't think a lot of Miami though. I think they're pretty overrated. So
by the way, they also play the Ravens and the Bengals.
Yeah, well, that's a lot.
So you're playing the Ravens, the Bengals, the AFC West, and the NFC East.
Yeah, it's a rough schedule.
I'm not sure more than one team gets in, and the AFC East on talent, just talent, may be the best division in football, but they also have the hardest schedule in football.
Yeah. It's all the more reason to, kind of my question. Like, I mean, what's realistic to view as like, okay, that was successful given the circumstances? I guess that's really the crux of what I'm getting at.
My success doesn't change for what we gave up. Okay. It doesn't. It's a zero-sum game. You wanted to win. You gave up X.
Right. Okay.
Well, if you don't win, you didn't make X. To me,
see, it
just doesn't work.
I make a qualification on
You're
draft
not a Jets fan. You're not allowed to make a qualification.
Well, I'm allowed to do what I want to do here. Come on.
Yeah, let's understand. You are not a long-suffering Jets fan. You
No,
are not allowed to make a qualification based on the Jets team.
I am allowed to make qualifications based on being a long-suffering Mets fan. How about that? No, all I was saying is when I look at draft picks, I look at who is going to be, what organization is going to be making those draft picks. And the truth of the matter is that how well they've done historically with those draft picks goes a long way in me determining how valuable they are. And the fact is, the Jets are so bad at the draft in most of their history that I don't even know that I value draft picks as much as I would if I was, say, the Ravens. The Ravens have every reason to value their draft picks.
No, the Ravens have. Okay, so you are I understand your point. And I'm just going to make one little diatribe from it.
Okay.
You are comparing the Ravens, who have had 16 years of Eric DeCosta, right? And 16 years of Ozzie Newsome. It may actually be more at this point. But that's what you're depending on, right? You are making a value judgment based on the Jets with 4 different GMs, at least in the last 20 years.
Right.
Tannenbaum, Itzik, Mike Manigan, and Joe Douglas, at least. I know I'm missing a GM in there somewhere. I don't think you can do that. You can make it based on Joe Douglas if you want, because he's probably the one that's going to make that pick.
It's more based on the owner, and that's been the same. And I just think that the rotating door of GMs is cause and effect of poor ownership.
Well, if DeCosta would have left Baltimore, the Jets would have paid for him, but he wasn't going anywhere, which I guess is your point, because that's Steve Biscotti.
Right? Steve Biscotti knows what he's doing.
That's fine. I agree.
Woody Johnson doesn't.
Well,
I hope I guess what I'm saying is on a team like the Jets with their recent history, whatever the reason for it, I'm more comfortable. If I'm a fan of the team, I'm more comfortable with the known entity than the future draft activity.
As you should, but there's only you say that as a Mets fan too, right? Yes. And then you went out and got Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett and gave up your next half decade.
Yeah, but you also weren't going anywhere either. And that was also,
to your point, are the Jets going anywhere?
They're going from not being a playoff contender last year aside, to being a absolute playoff contender who might go further. So
I will tell you one thing that I am looking forward to. The Jets will be on TV at least 8 times this year on national games.
That's true. And that's all Aaron Rodgers.
Will be on that. And I would bet Thanksgiving is going to be Dallas versus the Jets.
Sounds good to me. By the way, I think Dallas has taken a big step back this year. I think they're not going to be nearly as good as they've been the last few years.
Well, that would be lovely for the 4:00 game on Thanksgiving Day. All right, buddy. Man. I got to run.
Yeah,
so have a great week.
I'll see you next time.
Soon.
All right, man.
All right, bye.
That's Sean. This is the Gary Ayd Show. We're going to continue on here. I hear where he's coming from. Sean is probably the most virulent defender of draft capital, value for your dollar, value for your assets guy that I know. He is. And that's a fine methodology. My only point was, and is, those assets are only as valuable as your ability to deploy them effectively. And do I trust Joe Douglas more than I trusted Mike McCagnon? Yes, I do. But do I believe that Douglas is wholly unencumbered from having to occasionally do the bidding of Johnson and not make his own judgment on potentially key personnel decisions? No, I don't believe that at all. It's the same way until Leon Rose that I always felt about Knicks general managers. People would complain all the time. They keep trading all their picks. They don't draft their guys. This, that, the other. Well, the ownership is too involved. And Sean referenced the whole thing with Carmelo Anthony. that was James Dolan. That wasn't Donnie Walsh. Now, I've often defended that trade on the basis that the guys that they traded to Denver weren't going to get them any further than they ultimately were taken by Carmelo Anthony in his best year of 2012 when they lost in the, I think it was the second round of the playoffs. That was the best that team was going to do if they had the Mozgovs and the Wilson Chandlers and the Gallinaris, like all the guys, the Feltons, all the guys that gave up in that trade. They would have gone at best to the second round with that group. That's all, if I remember correctly, that's all Denver did with that group. So I don't think they lost that trade. They didn't win it either, but they didn't lose it. And what they did get is they got the star player. But anyway, the point is, that wasn't Donnie Walsh's choice. That was Dolan's choice. And when you have an involved meddling owner, you really very seldomly make optimal personnel decisions, particularly in matters of the draft where they're unproven. So I think that for me, and again, Sean's right, I'm not a Jet fan, but my experience as a Met fan, my observations as a sports talk show host, observing a lot of teams from a more detached perspective, my experience tells me if I have a team that is not good at drafting for one reason or the other, usually it's poor ownership or meddling ownership, I would rather trade those assets and get known completed products, personnel that my ineptitude can't screw up. It doesn't matter how bad of a personnel guy, how meddling and how temperamental Woody Johnson may or may not be as it relates to Aaron Rodgers as a football player. He is beyond his ability to screw up. A rookie isn't. The wrong rookie, the wrong system, the wrong timing, the wrong position drafted, all those things can and do screw up teams. I think the Jets are better served. I understand Sean's point. If this was an organization, like I use the Baltimore as an example, you can find others too. Pittsburgh comes to mind. The Eagles come to mind. If they were an organization that drafted well consistently, I would feel less good about this trade because of what they gave up. But given the likelihood that what they gave up would have just been squandered with suboptimal selection and player development anyway, given their history, I'm happier with the known proven entity. If I'm a Jet fan, I think they're better off for it. I really do. And let's also talk about this specific position in this specific franchise. The Jets have never, ever had a great quarterback, ever. You could say, well, Namath. Oh, yeah, okay, he threw more interceptions than touchdowns. He was, I guess, great in the context of his era when that was more common. But even if I give you Namath, which we can debate, but I'll just give you that one. That's 60 years ago almost. When did they win that Super Bowl in 19? What was it, 67, 68? Guys, it's 2023. That's 50-odd years ago, going on 6 decades. And then shortly after that, he fell apart physically. We know this. Other than Namath, who are the Jets quarterbacks? Who's the next best guy? Is it Vinny Testaverde? Probably. Maybe it's Chad Pennington. Perhaps it's, dare I say, Mark Sanchez in the butt fumble. I mean, really, this has been an awful organization with quarterbacks. The only one that might be worse in their history is probably the Bears. I mean, they only had Sid Luckman like 100 years ago in the 40s. That's probably their only great quarterback in their history. Jim McMahon wasn't a great quarterback. He was a cocky kid who fit that team. Didn't have to do much because they had such an overpowering defense and a great running game. Like, other than the Bears, this is probably the worst franchise in NFL history as far as this position goes. So I'm sorry if call me a skeptic that you could have traded 9 first-round picks for Aaron Rodgers, and I still would have said, you know what, they're probably better off because they'd waste all of those picks on quarterbacks and none of them will work out, because that's what it's been. People say, well, that's the past, Gary. Well, the only way to try to evaluate the future is what a particular organization or personnel team have done in the past. Does it mean it's going to repeat itself? No, but it gives me a pretty darn good indicator that it could. And I just don't trust it. I would rather the known entity with a team like this. I definitely would. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back. Hour 2 is around the corner. Top 5 is next. Rich Anselmo joins us momentarily. It's the Gary Ayd Show here on The Cave. All righty, welcome into hour 2 of the Gary Ayd Show here on The Cave, cavetalkradio.com and the Cave Talk Radio app. And Rich Anselmo has joined me for the second hour today. Good to have him back. And, of course, we got the top 5. But before we get into that, Rich, I just have to ask you your quick 2 cents on this. I know it's probably the furthest thing from your mind right now. I understand that. But just in general, forget it's the Jets or even football specifically. If you're in a position where you are a fan of a franchise that consistently over decades suboptimally drafts, and you have a chance to get an older established entity, are you upset about giving up the draft capital, or are you happy to have the known product? Where do you fall on that?
It depends on the known product.
Okay. So in this example, they got Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, do it.
Right. Okay. All right. That's all. That's what I think too. It's like, I went through the whole lineage. We don't have to do that again, but it's just, to me, when your best quarterback in your entire franchise's history retired almost 60 years ago, over 50 years ago, and he wasn't even that great except for a handful of years. And then the next best guy might be a guy most known for fumbling with his butt. Like, yeah, give me Aaron Rodgers. Like these draft picks aren't working.
I agree.
It's like, I don't care that he's 40. It's like, oh man. And
I thought you were going to ask me about their drafts. And the only thing I know is they took some kid that most people hated, but someone I talked to that I respect a lot said the kid can really play.
Okay. Yeah. No, I just was really talking mostly with the Jets about the Rodgers thing because.
Well, that's who I was talking about draft wise too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Oh no, you I don't care if it's 1 year and off to Minnesota, as Green Bay quarterbacks do.
Yes. Yes. The parallels with that are
take
fun.
Him.
Absolutely. The one thing I'll say that I think makes the Rodgers thing a little different than the Favre thing. Favre wanted to go to Minnesota direct from Green Bay, and they wouldn't do it. This is where Rodgers wanted to go.
Right.
Which is good. The one thing that the last thing I'll say on this, we'll get to the top 5. The one thing that we talked about with Sean that would concern me the most is just how loaded the AFC as a conference is, how good that division is, and the particular divisions as Sean fleshed out that the Jets are playing this year. I mean, they're going to go through a gauntlet. So I would tell fans, qualify your success based on circumstances. I mean, if Rodgers leads this team to 10 or 11 wins, and let's say they miss the playoffs narrowly because they're in a loaded conference, I think that's still, to me, that would be a successful year. Because look, you're not better than Buffalo. You're not better than Kansas City. You're probably not better than Baltimore. Like, there's a lot of teams that you're not better than Cincinnati.
Right.
Maybe you're the same as Miami. Maybe you're slightly better than San Diego or LA. Maybe you're not. I mean, let's be real with what we're talking about here. I mean, this is a loaded conference right now.
I think the first thing they need to do is worry about relevance.
Yes. Yes.
There was this quote push for the playoffs last year.
Mm-hmm.
No, get relevant first.
Right. I agree.
Worry about the playoffs down the line.
Right.
Show that you can take the next step from last year.
Yes. Agreed. Totally agree. All right. So there we go. I just wanted to kind of, I was kind of on fire with that topic the last few minutes. So I wasn't quite ready to give it up yet, but I'm ready to move on now.
I don't blame you. It is interesting. And yes, it is the farthest thing from my mind.
Oh, I knew that. I knew that. And that's fine. And it probably should be. But, I get into one of these topics. I just get in the groove, and you know how I am. So thanks for humoring me for 5 minutes. All right. What do we got for the top 5?
The continuation from yesterday that you suggested.
Okay.
Flip it around.
Okay. So now we're talking what new guys get wrong about old guys. Yesterday it was the other way around. Well, first of all, number one, without a doubt, is this idea that old guys were somehow far less athletic and far less skilled. That's just not true.
And a lot of that comes from J.J. Redick and Kendrick Perkins.
Perkins is
neither who are anywhere near the two most athletic people.
Yeah, Kendrick Perkins was nothing. He was just a big old goon. He was basically Rick Mahorn. Basically. I mean, and look, I got nothing wrong with those type of players. I like those kind of guys, but like, don't go up there and, you know, talk about things that like, well, dude, you average 4 points a game and 6 rebounds, if that, and like, you know, let's chill. You know, when Barkley trashes someone, you know, it has some validity only because this guy was a monster. You know, like I still don't think he's right all the time. And I don't think it's wrong to disagree with a guy who is a better player than you. You don't want to get into that game either. But but there is an element of forced recognition when you're hearing an opinion from a guy who is that good. And I think for me, though, getting back to the task at hand, this idea, like, I don't let's take a guy like Trae Young. Is he any more athletic, faster, quicker than Nate Archibald was? No, absolutely
no.
not.
In fact, he's not close.
Is he any more?
Tiny was speedy.
Oh, fast as hell.
Trae Young's fast.
Yes, I mean Tiny was De'Aaron Fox fast.
Yes, yes.
That's probably the better comparison.
Oh yeah.
Is Trae Young better, more fluid offensively, more explosive offensively than Dave Bing? I don't think so.
No.
So, like,
but you're also trying to compare him to all-time greats.
Right. Well,
that's hard.
No, of course. And look, I mean, do I think the average NBA wing, do I think someone like trying to think
Mute.
Yeah, or someone, Luka Mute, or maybe someone like I don't know, Andrew Wiggins. He's a little bit better than average, but someone like that. Do I think Nick Batum? There's a good one. Do I think Nicholas Batum is better than his 1982 equivalent? Maybe, but maybe not. It depends on the equivalent. Like, for example, is Nick Batum better than Brian Winters? I don't think so.
I wouldn't call them equivalents.
They're not equivalents. Yeah, it's probably not a good example. But
Brian Winters was quite the underrated player.
Right. Yeah, he was an excellent player.
There were Batum-like players then. I think Batum is a little smarter than a lot of players, and I think he has the advantage of having 30 more years of study than those other
and
players
a little
did.
less cocaine.
Probably. Knowing Batum, probably a lot. He's not a...
It was 1980s. So cocaine was like the halftime meal.
Oh, they were snorting it on the sidelines. Come on.
Like, we got Italian combos, we got pasta vajul, and some fresh blow for the post-game team meal. That was 1984. Is that powdered sugar? Oh, you could call it that. Some call it booger sugar.
Yeah. It's powdered sugar, but in a completely different way.
Oh my goodness. But that's definitely my number one. Is this idea that just because you play today means you're more athletic or more skilled than a like counterpart from decades ago.
Who was more athletic today than Wilt was?
Nobody. No, nobody. No one's ever gonna be, probably. I mean, the only person even in that class is LeBron.
Right.
And Giannis. Those would be the two.
Yeah. And it's a different game.
Yeah, of course.
What wing is that much more athletic now than Michael Cooper?
I mean,
Cooper was an amazing athlete.
yeah, I mean, Cooper was probably every bit as athletic as, Jimmy Butler or
Yeah.
anyone other than like the guys we just mentioned, LeBron and Giannis. That's probably about it.
Right. Right. And in his prime before injuries, Grant Hill was another one.
Grant Hill was incredible.
He was a beast.
I think a guy that I think also deserves some credit is Detlef Schrempf. This is a guy who is an incredibly versatile power forward who brought a lot to the table. So that's one. Number two for me is this idea that whatever advantages modern players think they have, this concept that if Wilt Chamberlain came along today, he wasn't going to have the same advantages. Well, of course he would. He would do the same stuff everyone else was doing.
Well, because he would be in this era.
Right,
yes.
exactly.
Yeah, I can't stand that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one. Number two, number three, I guess, is I don't like this idea that young players and current players seem to think that older players were less like cared less about issues outside of basketball. I mean,
Talk to Bill Russell.
Well,
when you could.
Yeah. I think I was just going to make a carve out for that. I think most players probably acknowledge what guys like Russell did during like the height of the civil rights era.
Yes.
But I don't think anyone knows at all what Oscar Robertson did for free agency in the 70s or what Tom Chambers, being one of the first real free agents, did for player empowerment. And these were not things that came easy or without fight or behind the scenes strife and negotiating.
Tommy Heinsohn in the 1964 All-Star game or 65, leading the locker room to not play until the union's demands were met. There were a lot of fights that most people don't know about now. And that's mostly the fault of the NBA because their pre-Jordan history is almost non-existent.
Right. It's Magic and Bird and, occasional flashes of Russell and Chamberlain. And that's basically it. It's true. I mean, and that game you're referencing, a little context to that, they had optimal leverage when they did that because that was the first year the NBA was going to have a nationally televised all-star game by CBS. And you have to think in the context of 1965, if you were a Knicks fan, this was the only time in the year you were going to see Elgin Baylor because there was no cable television. You weren't going to LA. There was no Twitter, Facebook, anything like that. Like there was no NBA TV. Like this was it. This is the only way you saw players back then, actually physically saw them, was if they happened to play in your market. And even then TV was in its infancy. Or if you went to a game that they were playing in, that was it. So you had one or two chances during the year at most to see most of these guys. So an all-star game in the context of 1965 was such a huge deal because it was the only time that most people got to see these guys. And now to have a nationally televised broadcast for the first time was enormous. So the timing, it was a stroke of genius by the players to do it then in that locker room. They had the NBA by the balls.
And the owners that knew the players were right. Tom Heinsohn never got it held against him by Red.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
In fact, Red made him a coach.
Yep. Very good coach.
Some players really got it from their owners. Some players were treated like garbage. And that's exactly what they were fighting against. And most of today's players don't know that because it's never dwelled on. It's never taught. It's never talked about.
Right. And I think the next thing down the line, and you see this more in baseball, but it's certainly talked about in football and basketball too, is this idea that young players think old guys talking about the reality that they used to play full seasons is just some get off my lawn thing. And in some cases it is, but in a lot of cases it's not. When Karl Malone says these guys need to be in shape and play and that's their job, he can say that because this man missed like about 30 games in 19 years.
He
So
stayed in shape.
he can say whatever he wants.
Anyone who tried to train with him will attest to that, I'm sure.
It's like, so
This guy was climbing mountains in July. I mean, he stayed in shape.
yeah,
And he
dragging a
played.
ar behind him, right? It's just a monster.
Even Stockton said he went to work out with him a few times and he said, I'm done.
You're gonna kill me. Yeah, no, it's and so there's that. And I think that I think all this stuff comes down to the fact that there is seemingly very little mutual respect for the perspective of the other side, because both sides have points.
I will throw the one in there.
What's that?
And I'm not against the more recently retired and current players. But the one that bothers me the most, those guys weren't that good. They played against plumbers. Yeah, Shaq was a great center.
Yep.
You'd never hear him say that.
Nope.
Because he knows. He played against maybe 5 or 6 greats.
Yes, he did.
How many did Wilt or Russell play against? Not even counting each other.
Well, how many teams were there? 8,
You had
10?
Thurman, you had Bellamy, you had Reed. Every team had one.
Well, yes.
They played more man games against Hall of Famers than the players talking about them did.
No, that's exactly right. I had this very conversation with a guy at the coffee shop late last week. I think it was Friday last week. Young guy, nice guy, big basketball fan. And we were talking about this. And the one thing I told him, and we seemed to disagree on, was we were talking about the Knicks and when they had last won a championship. And I said it was 100 years ago, being facetious, and then mentioned the 70s. And he goes, "Well, it doesn't count." I said, "Well, of course it counts. It's part of the league history." He goes, "Yeah, but the game was, there weren't enough teams back then." So my argument, I understand his point. So I said, well, the counterpoint to that is, with less teams comes a higher concentration of talent. So even the bad teams had 3 Hall of Famers on them in most cases. Like you take Walt Bellamy's Hawks. They weren't a good team.
But they had Lou Hudson.
Walt Bellamy, Hall of Famer. Pistol Pete, Hall of Famer. Lou Hudson, Hall of Famer. Should be Hall of Famer. I don't know if he's actually in. But and that was a bad team. Now, you talk about
Cincinnati Royals.
Yeah,
Oscar Robertson, Jerry Lucas,
Yep.
Connie Durking. It's a quality NBA center.
Very good team.
Everyone can't win.
And these were the bad teams. So, I mean, to your point, and your point's exactly right. It's well taken. When there were fewer teams, all the talent was concentrated. And so every night was a battle. And of course, the NBA at that time was built around a pivot man,
right?
Unlike today. So every team started there. That was where every team looked to have its best player. So, whether you were talking about Zellea Beatty or Walt Bellamy or Nate Thurmond, Willis Reed, and Wes Unseld later on, of course, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. These are all guys that Wilt had to go against. Like you said, not even counting Bill Russell. I mean, this is this is not a cakewalk. I mean, Willis Reed and Unseld were not the tallest centers in the world, but try moving them. Elvin Hayes at power forward was a force. I mean, a lot of great big men.
My favorite story was told to me by the great Bob Lanier.
Oh, that's another one. Yeah.
When who played from 1970 on, who talked about Wilt. Said the first time he tried to get in position and Wilt wouldn't budge. Second time he raced down the floor ahead of him to try to take his position away from him. And Wilt turned back, picked him up. And Bob Lanier was up 285 pounds, picked him up and moved him and turned and said, "Son, don't do that anymore."
Yeah, I've heard Bob Lanier tell that story. I think he said he picked me up and moved me like I was a teacup.
Yeah.
He goes, I go 6'11", 280. He picks me up and moves me like I'm a little cup of tea and just says, "Son, don't do that anymore." How emasculating must have that felt like?
Now, the point, and you made this point the other day, you hate how happy the players look talking to each other post game.
Yes.
You didn't see that back then. But what you didn't see, because there wasn't 24/7 media, is Wilt going to Bill Russell's house and Russell's wife cooking them both dinner.
Right.
You didn't see that.
Right.
Until a movie was made out of it. You had no idea what Jack Twyman did.
Right. Right.
Unless you know the history,
Regarding
like I do, because I've been around
Stokes.
for enough of it.
Right.
And you do because you study it.
Yep. Yeah, regarding Stokes. Yeah, that was
yes.
That was something. By the way, one thing I just have to say here real quick. This is unrelated to the top 5, but if I don't say it now, I'm going to forget about it. I meant to mention it yesterday. Draymond Green saying he lost respect for Sabonis for not shaking hands. Well, sorry, dude, you stomped me in the chest. Like, I don't want to shake your hand. I don't want to shake your hand. The hell with you. Do I care if I lost your respect? You think I respect you? You go around kicking people in the nuts, stomping them in the chest. And I'm like, no, get out of here. Curry had 50. That's the only reason you won. And nothing to do with you.
Yes.
It's like, please.
Anyway. That makes me crazy too. This isn't hockey.
Right.
In hockey, it's a tradition.
Yes, to fight.
No, for the handshake. Yeah.
Yeah.
In basketball, it's not. It wasn't always done.
Right. Yeah, I've never gotten behind it myself. Like, because here's the thing. If I win, I feel sensitive to going over and shaking their hand because I don't want to feel like I'm like rubbing it in. And
that's exactly what I was thinking.
And if I lose, I'm not in the mood to shake your hand. I'm pissed. So like, it's not wrong. It just is. Like, I'm competitive. I lost. I'm mad.
Yes.
I'm done. Like, I'll go take my shower, cool off, talk to the media because it's my job, and that's it. I don't just shake your hand.
That's the one thing I respected about the Bill Laimbeer reproach.
Yes, agreed. I totally agree.
Isaiah Thomas was talking years later about how he regretted it. Laimbeer's like, F that. I started it. I don't regret it. I'd do it again.
I love it. Love it. Absolutely love it. Look, I mean, I think there's an element of this of like intent to it and reason. Like, you know, if you're doing it just to be an ass, that's different. But generally speaking, I give guys the benefit of the doubt. And if you don't shake hands, you're probably just pissed off and frustrated that you lost. And that's perfectly normal.
LeBron has left the court before.
Yes.
In the 4-0 sweep, he also left the court against Golden State with a couple minutes left, but he did go by their bench and shake hands.
Right.
There's no reason that you have to hang out on the court.
No, I don't think so either. I really don't.
And I especially don't want to see you getting a trophy. It's not going to inspire me. It's just going to piss me off.
Yeah, I don't want to watch that. And that's
besides, that's your time.
Right, exactly.
Enjoy it, because next year you're not going to have it.
Right, so I'm going to take it from you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. So no, that's the top 5. It's a pretty good list. I mean, bottom line is this: people have to accept the fact that great athletes were great athletes then as they are now. There's no question that guys who were NBA players then would be NBA players today, assuming they had the same, training. And it's not even about being athletic or having the talent. It's more about, if you think of the NBA player or an athlete as a unformed block of clay or granite for a sculptor, if you think about it like that, right? The quality of the raw material is the same. It's a matter of how is it shaped? What's the taste of the end client? In this case, the end client is the style of play of the NBA today, which is open, positionless, shooting is a premium, versatility to switch on guys defensively is a premium. You don't think that you talked about Connie Dearkin, you don't think if he was trained that way from the moment he was that high quality block of granite, he would have come out with those abilities? Of course he would.
Right.
But that wasn't what was needed then. You needed to be physically tough. You needed to be able to bang in the post. You needed to be able to run fast breaks. And that's what he was good at.
And that's another part of the argument I don't like. Well, today's players don't have to be as physical. We would still out physical you. Well, tell that to the late Maurice Lucas.
Right.
whose stare would have hurt you.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, and that's the thing. Like, do I think, take James Harden, for example, if he played in 1975 or 1980, do I think he'd be as good as he is? Yeah, I do, because I think he would play differently. I think he would finish through contact more. He has the
He
body.
would have grown up playing
Right,
that.
right. Now there are some guys that I question their physical build relative to different eras. Like I question someone like I think Zelmo Beatty, for example, a great player, would have had a hard time being a center in today's NBA.
He would have been a power forward.
And I think Steph Curry would have a much harder time dominating in 1970 because people would just beat the crap out of him. Now, I think they'd both find their way and find a way to be excellent because they're
Well,
great
in
talents.
1970, people wouldn't have chased him out that far either.
Right. Well, because there was no
until he
reason.
started hitting shots,
Right.
which.
But then the other thing is, in 1970, you're not going to shoot from 40 feet because there's no benefit to it.
Right.
You know, there's no benefit to it. Do I think Jerry West could come into today's game and be the best shooter along with Curry in the? Oh, absolutely. I watched a video of him.
Maravich.
Oh, Maravich. I watched a video of Jerry West. It probably filmed about 10 years ago. He was at some like high school gymnasium, high school and middle school. He's talking to a bunch of kids about life and basketball and talking about the importance of practice and how shooting is muscle memory. And once you get it down, you'll never forget. And here he is, like, you know, trying to demonstrate getting the elbow in, getting the elbow out. He's talking on the microphone. He's about 75 years old. He's like, yeah, I haven't shot a basketball in years. And he's like trying to miss free throws to demonstrate bad form versus good form. And he's making every one of them one-handed while he's talking, trying to miss, hasn't shot in years. He's 75 years old. And I'm just thinking,
that muscle memory's built. It's built in.
I'm like, wow. Amazing stuff.
I remember Jack Ramsey was on the radio team later in his life, was on the radio team of the Miami Heat. And he would tell all the young players, McAdoo was coaching that.
I remember that.
He'd say, if you think you're all that, get into shooting contest with him. They're like, Coach, he's kind of old. He said, just try it. He said, McAdoo never lost.
I believe it. Well, that's when people say Kevin Durant or someone is like the first of this. It's like, well, probably
he's Bob McAdoo.
Yeah, Bob McAdoo was doing this in the 70s. And before that, I mean, Bob Pettit and Jerry Lucas were incredible outside shooters from the floor.
Oh, geez, Lucas used to toss up bombs.
So
25-foot bombs.
Yep. There's nothing new under the sun.
That one-legged kick out when he took those shots.
Yes. Yeah. He's a weird case in NBA history. There's probably only been a handful of players, even to this day, that were as hyped and celebrated coming out of prep as Lucas. And now he's like completely forgotten by history.
Oh, yeah.
But he was like one of the most hyped guys coming out of prep in like.
And I guarantee when the NBA in 25 years does this NBA 100, guys like that will be completely forgotten.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's no doubt about it.
Which is why I probably won't be around for the next list, and I don't care.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I probably will be.
I know who's great.
I'll be the old guy at that point, but that's okay.
I know who's great, and it doesn't mean I forgot them because something shiny and new came along.
Right.
They can all be great.
Yep. The only problem I had with this year's list, well, the two biggest problems was the lack of Alex English and the fact that they included Anthony Davis over Dwight Howard. Like, come on.
Yeah, on both.
Please.
Not saying Davis can't be on that list next time around, but Howard needed to.
Howard has to this point, Howard has the better career.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's take a quick break.
And obviously Howard still has a career.
Yeah. Well, he's hanging out in Taiwan or wherever he is right now. Just chilling.
And tearing it up, getting triple doubles and
knocking down threes. Yeah. Whenever.
So you mean he can't come back and come off someone's bench here?
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. Whenever someone says to me, "Oh, watch out, the rest of the world's catching up," I point them to that. I was like, "Yeah, go watch Dwight Howard in Taiwan. So they got a little ways to go still. Like this guy can't make an NBA roster. Probably for
they have a long way to go. Spain, countries like that are catching up, but they're not there. They're not near there, but they're good and they can compete.
Oh, I'm not saying they're not good, but I think their best players are as good as anyone, depending on who we're talking about. But their average guy is nowhere near the average NBA player.
Right.
That was more my point. And now you take a
And
country
that's a team like Spain. That's what usually kills them in competitions against the U.S. It's not the starters.
Right. It's the depth.
It's the bench.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, all right. Well, let's take a break. We'll come back. We got a little more to get to. Want to do a little NBA playoffs. Specifically, I want to talk about the Lakers Warriors matchup tonight, and I want to also discuss the Knicks, maybe without two of their best players, their two best guys. We'll talk about that next. It's the Gary Ayd Show.
Before we do that, I want to throw in something about the Boston game when we come back.
All right. Boston Celtics? Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll do that next. Back after this.
Are you like me? You have health insurance, but you don't have dental insurance. Do you need to get to the dentist right away? Maybe you need an implant or some other major service. Well, I found a dental insurance plan that's just right for you. It's called Spirit Dental. Spirit Dental offers a $100 lifetime deductible, a huge network of dentists. And here's the best part. There's no waiting periods. Yeah, that means you can call right now and have real dental insurance for you and your family tomorrow and get that immediate coverage you want. Spirit Dental has plans for just a few dollars a day, up to $5,000 annual maximum, and coverage for implants. Whatever age you are, the dental insurance you need is a free phone call away. Now don't wait, and be sure to ask about Spirit's vision plan. Here's the number: 800-631-9229. 800-631-9229. That's 800-631-9229.
Hey friend, life happens and you need money. What do? You call the special toll-free number we're about to give you. We will send you a link to your phone with details on how you can loan up to $5,000. Couldn't you use $5,000 to pay for your rent, pay grocery bills, get your car repaired, or whatever you need? It's up to you. We don't care. We're just here to lend you the money. And we'll lend people money with good, bad, or no credit at all. Of course, some terms and conditions apply, and you'll see those on the link we're going to send you. So if you need up to $5,000 maybe as soon as the next business day, call this number right now. We will text you a free link with details.
Paid for by Money Mutual. Call 800-586-7112. 800-586-7112. 800-586-7112. That's 800-586-7112.
All righty, we're back here on the Gary Ayd Show. What did you have on the Celtics game, Rich?
What is with the Garden? They go from eliminating the Bruins one night to the Celtics looking last night like they've never seen defense before. That was a game that was theirs for the taking, even with the game Harden played.
Yeah,
How do you just not show up for the first game in a series at home? Defensively, they just did not show up.
Yeah, it's pretty wild because I said it last night, I'll say it again. I think that was the best game of James Harden's career to this point.
Agree.
I think the weight of the world proverbially was definitely on his shoulders this game. And unlike in times past, he really came through in a big way, clutch all the way around. He was engaged and has been all year defensively. No one's going to confuse him with a stopper, but he's a willing, capable defender now that does his job on the defense. And he carried them. Maxey had a very good game. Harris made some shots, but that game was James Harden all the way. And Boston has to feel sick. This is a game, like you said, Rich, and you're absolutely right. They shouldn't have lost. The Philly on the road, no Embiid. You need to win that game if you're Boston. You just straight up do. And they didn't.
You do. And this thing of Tatum, I'm going to come down and score around. Well, I got to come down and score. It's like run an offense, guys.
Yeah. No, they very. The only guy, who almost won them the game down the stretch was neither of them. It was Marcus Smart.
Yes.
He made a number of big plays, couple of lucky shots, couple of steals, couple of this. I mean, he's one of those guys. I was telling my wife, he doesn't really follow basketball that closely. She knows a little bit, but not much. I was telling her, I said, see this guy with the green hair? This is the exact type of guy that you can't stand, except if he's on your team, you love him. He might score 11 points in the whole game, but 8 of them are going to be points that turn around momentum or make some other outsized impact during the course of the game, because that's just how he is.
And it's not even talking about the defensive
Right.
plays.
Well, that's why he's in the NBA, because of his defense. But, the little
watching
offense
the
he gives you,
Celtics, they show no semblance of an offense.
None. You're right.
And you don't win like that in the playoffs. And I hate to keep beating this dead horse because I've wanted to believe in this team all year. I can't.
No, I can't.
I can't. But you know what they could really use? A great coach.
Yeah. I wonder who that could be.
Go figure. They had one.
Doing. Yep.
Oh man. It's just.
Yeah. I mean, this whole thing's a mess. I'll say this: that same conversation I was telling you about in the coffee shop with that young man. Another part of the conversation was prognosticating the Eastern Conference playoffs, because at that point, like, the playoffs were like a game old, like they had just played game ones basically. Or maybe no, I'm sorry, Philly had just swept Brooklyn. That's what it was. We were midway through round one, and I said I think Philly is gonna win. If Milwaukee's not there, I said I think Philly, the winner of Boston and Philly, will be your NBA champion, and he was all team Boston. And I said, I'm telling you, Philly has it this year. They have all of the pieces. Now, look, they're not going to win a championship if Embiid's not back healthy.
Right.
But assuming he doesn't sound like a super serious injury, just kind of a nagging one, assuming he gets back. And now this win buys them time. Like, now if he's iffy for game 2, it's never house money, but it's kind of house money. You got what you needed in Boston. You got your
If he's not 100% or anywhere close to it, don't play
him in game 2, because then you have the travel day.
You've done what you've accomplished. You've accomplished what you set out to do, and that's take a game in Boston.
Right, exactly. So I would expect him to play in game 3 at this point. I would be surprised a little bit if he plays in game 2, unless he's just perfect. If he wakes up and he's perfect, then, by all means, play him. But if he's not perfect, I agree with you. You're playing with house money here a little bit. You met your objective for this first 2 games. So, but I think they're the best team, and I think that they're likely to win the whole thing with a healthy Embiid. I just think
the only thing I question, gee, where do you think that's going
to be? Well,
no matter if they play New York or Miami.
Yep.
If those teams are healthy, they're going to get out coached.
Yes. Yep.
But if both those teams are healthy, they can't stop Embiid.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks probably have a better shot because of Robinson.
Yes.
But no one's stopping Embiid. I mean, I don't even know that you can even slow him down. And with the way Harden is playing, the only way you slow Embiid down is throwing extra defenders at him and really, forcing the issue. And then you're just asking for it, because he's going to kick it out to Harden. Harden's going to make the shot, or he's going to swing it to Maxey or Harris or Melton.
Yeah. All of whom can shoot.
All of them can shoot. This team has it all. They're engaged defensively. This is a really good team. And
Harris doesn't see the ball a lot. But I'll tell you what he did on defense yesterday had a lot to do with it.
Yep. Yeah, he's found a way to be impactful without having the ball as much as maybe his talent would otherwise indicate he should.
And it's hard to say when the guy you were on got 30-something that he played good defense, but there were also some key spots where he didn't let him get the ball.
Right. Yep.
And that's the beginning of good defense.
Yep, absolutely. Ball denial. No question about it. Now let's talk about some of these other games. You have game 1 between the Lakers and Golden State. And then let's talk about Denver, though, for a second. I got to tell you, Phoenix looks overmatched.
Yeah, they do.
Particularly, I'm I'm not the biggest Durant guy in the world, but I am stunned at how ineffective his shooting is against this Denver team. I'm shocked by it.
10 for 27.
Shocked.
Booker had a lot of points, but he shot under 50%. He had 30-something points.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think they're probably okay with Booker being leading scorer and being somewhat efficient if it means limiting Durant.
He was more efficient than Durant, but he still wasn't efficient. I think he was 17 for 35.
Yeah,
it's a lot of shots to get the number of points.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, and it's not because of his shooting percentage. That's a pretty good percentage, but it's contested hard twos. They weren't making threes. This is not a 3-point team. Durant can make them, Booker can make them, but they're mid-range guys, both of them.
Right.
And
that's when they're at their best.
That's their best. And Denver is too good of a shooting team, I believe, to beat that way. Denver's going to shoot close to 40% from three most nights. And, Denver in game 2, Murray had nothing. After the superlative game 1, he was awful. But that
happens every once in a while. And that was my concern. What happens when Murray's not on his game?
Jokic goes and gets 40 and doesn't miss.
Jokic was amazing.
That's what happens, apparently.
He was amazing. And I just don't buy an argument that he has no business being the MVP.
No, I mean, that's a stupid argument. Look, if Joel Embiid wins, I'm not going to be upset about it. He's equally deserving.
Yes.
But if Jokic wins, I'm not going to be mad either. I mean, the guy is incredible.
I just hate the whole argument. It's ridiculous. The guy was 0.2 of an assist a game away from having a triple-double as a center.
No, I know. He's incredible. I mean,
and I like the fact Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's
so good.
Picked up his game.
So good. I've always been a fan of his.
That was my concern with Denver. What happens when one of those two has an off game? Yep. Well, a bunch of people picked it up.
Yeah, Aaron Gordon's been very good this postseason.
Mentioned
Porter. Yep.
Porter, him and Pope defensively on that one side.
They're so good.
We're just shutting things down. And I'm like, man, Denver's playing defense.
Yeah. No, they're an excellent team. They're deeper than I thought. Pope, I've always been a fan of his. There was one guy I was not happy to lose.
He impressed me.
Yeah.
Last night a lot.
Yeah, he's a really, really good player. He's one of those guys that you find littered on championship teams. You always find guys like that. Whether it's him or Danny Green or Bruce Bowen or Rick Fox or Robert Orr, you find guys like that on championship teams all the time. He's one of those type of guys. He really is.
And when Murray was off, and Murray still played good defensively, but his numbers were huge.
He just couldn't throw the ball in the ocean yesterday.
No, he was 3 for 17? I think 2 for 10 from 3.
See, he had a John Starks game.
Yes.
The only difference is, in addition to their version of Ewing, the Nuggets also had other guys who can actually shoot instead of just clothesline people.
And if Denver plays defense like that,
you're not beating them.
They're going to be a tough out for anybody.
Yeah, no, I mean, I watched them, and the way Gordon and Porter, as you mentioned, have taken on that role of defensive stoppers and done it so well.
Yeah, and Pope's always been a good defender.
Yes, he's your classic D&3 wing.
Yes.
With those three, I think that they got the defensive versatility I questioned going into the playoffs. And between Murray and Jokic, they're going to find points. One of them's going to get it done.
Oh, yeah.
And then other guys, like you mentioned, will fill in the gaps. Porter.
And Murray doesn't have those kind of days.
No.
Very often.
No. I mean, it's just, and look, Jokic, what are you going to say? The guy the one good play Murray had offensively all night came off of a great Jokic touch pass. I don't know if you saw that play. It was so cool. Yeah, they inbounded the ball. I forget who inbounded it. It might have actually been Murray. And then he cut right to the basket, and Jokic, who had gotten the inbound, basically did a touch pass to the curling cut. And then Murray finished with the reverse. It was an awesome play.
You very seldom see a center that initiates offense like
that. He's as good as there's ever been in that department from centers, so there's no doubt about it. What about this?
I think it would have helped if Ayton would have actually tried to jump when he shot.
Yeah, I think
try to guard him a little bit. I don't know if he's afraid of fouling him.
I was just going to say that one concern I had for Phoenix going into this series, which hasn't been the case, and Ayton deserves some credit for this. I thought Jokic was just going to have him doing jumping jacks, and that hasn't been the case. But to your point, it might be because he's consciously overcorrecting for that. So now he's not jumping because he's afraid of getting fouled and getting out of position and basically made to look a fool, which is a valid thing to be afraid of against Jokic.
Oh, yeah. You got to try to play him a little harder.
It's a tough, but I think that's where that's coming from. I think he's overcorrecting. I think he's being overly cautious. Like he's got in his head, stay on your feet no matter what. And he is, but to your point, it's leading to non-contested shots, which, doesn't help either. This is why Jokic is a hard guy to deal with.
He is.
Now, last game, you have the Lakers and you have the Warriors. I got to tell you, as a Laker fan, I'm not super optimistic about this series. I think they could win, but I think it's going to be tough. I think the Lakers have to shoot better from three in this series.
They haven't shot well from three all year.
That's why I'm not optimistic. Now, the one thing is the Warriors didn't shoot well from three against Sacramento. They shot about 30%. They were only about
which is what the Lakers have shot all year.
Right. So they were about the same. So now if that happens again, I think the Lakers have a very good chance. But
I think as Wiggins gets more game acclimated, his percentage will go up.
Yep, I agree.
I mean, he hasn't played in months.
Yep. I agree. That's why I'm not optimistic. Now, the one thing the Lakers have that the Kings didn't have, Sabonis underachieved, as we talked about a little bit yesterday. Davis is a beast when healthy.
He is.
That's going to be Kevon Looney's not averaging 20 rebounds a game against Anthony Davis.
No,
it's not happening. And so a lot of that's why it comes down to shooting. If the Warriors got away with their low 3-point shooting in large part because of Looney's offensive rebounding that series. If they shoot similar to that, they're not going to get the same offensive rebounds with Anthony Davis there.
Very true.
And that's where I think if the Lakers can keep the Warriors from just shooting them out of the gym, I think they have a shot because of Davis's defensive dominance and rebounding ability and the Lakers' own depth in terms of the number of guys that can actually contribute offensively. That's one area where they're similar to the Kings now with their current roster. They have about 6 guys that can really get some points.
And that's the biggest difference. If you'd have asked me in February if the Lakers would have squeezed in and what they would have done against anyone, I would have said nothing.
Not a chance. Nope, they didn't have it. Now you have.
But now it's completely different.
Totally different. You have Beasley, you have Austin Reeves, you got Vanderbilt. Of course, you got D'Angelo Russell. Those are 4 guys you didn't have before. Well, Reeves you had, but you have 3 guys you didn't have before that bring offense to the table.
And LeBron's going to be on his best game because it's Curry. Curry's going to be on his best game because of LeBron.
Absolutely.
So
this is NBA royalty right here. The 2 biggest stars in the sport.
It is. And there's a compete level there that's incredible, as well as a mutual respect.
Absolutely. Yep. No question about it. And what's going to be interesting? Here's a tactical question for you. Put your coaching hat on for a second. Where do you deploy Draymond Green? Do you deploy him on Davis to try to slow his rebounding and, keep him a little bit out of the paint, given Green's more mobile than Looney? Or do you put Looney on Davis and put Green on LeBron?
You got to put Green on LeBron.
Okay. Yeah, I think so.
Looney can't guard him.
Yeah, I mean, the only other guy would be like Klay Thompson or Wiggins, I suppose, would be the other 2.
Yeah. And I don't think any defensive pairing is going to be fluid. Anyway, I think certain people, and that's Davis and LeBron, are going to catch different people all the time.
Yep.
Because the Warriors switch very well.
Yeah, they do. You wonder, too, about what the Warriors are going to, like. I think an X factor in this series, for good or bad, is going to be D'Angelo Russell. If he's consistently a true number 3, and on some nights, like he was in Game 5 against Memphis, at number 1, or number 2, that gives the Lakers a lot of leverage in putting pressure on Steph Curry on that end of the floor, which is one of the best ways to contain him on the other end.
Yes. I think in the case of Russell, game 6 was the first playoff game he's played in where he shot 50% from the floor. He has to do that.
Yeah, I think so too.
He has to.
Well, close to it, 47, 46. He can't be down
he
in the
can't
30s.
be hitting in the low to mid 40s.
Nope, or even the high 30s.
They need that offense from him.
Nope, I agree. I totally agree. And
I think this is anyone's series. I don't think the Lakers are in trouble. I don't think the Warriors are in trouble. Although what I do think is the comment of the day I heard Sunday when they asked Kevin Love after the game, rediscovered his outlet passing in game 1 about Aaron Rodgers being in the stands. And Kevin Love said, well, you could tell him as of now, I have the best QBR in New York City.
That's awesome. I didn't hear that. That's great.
That made it for me.
That is tremendous. That is absolutely tremendous. While we're on this topic of fun anecdotes, I had completed the Wilt Chamberlain audiobook recently, and Wilt was famous for carrying around large sums of cash with him. And one of his guys that he was hanging out with was like, Wilt, why are you carrying all this cash around? And Wilt, deadpan, instantly replied, who's going to rob me?
Good point.
Like, have you looked at me?
I know we're up against the clock.
Yeah, what do you got?
I know it's after 12, but we did have another ending out a great 3-day run of game 7s last night. The New Jersey Devils shut out the New York Rangers 4-0 in the 11-mile war. Can't believe those two teams play 11 miles away from each other.
Isn't that something?
And it's a great rivalry. And it's a little hint about what the top 5 might look like tomorrow.
All right. Well, that's a good way to end. Good tease, as we call it. We will see you guys tomorrow, back on our normal schedule, 10 to noon, the Gary Ayd Show here on The Cave.